Brando, dude, there's the sickest game. You gotta come.
Okay.
Dude, I'm telling you, there is the worst players possible. They are throwing money away, dude. The only thing is it's a 5K buy-in.
5K buy-in, man. That's my entire bankroll.
Come on, dude. Just come.
Nah, man. Last time we did this, you know what happened.
Come, Brando. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Let's go.
Come on, man. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go. That skit aside, because you should never do what that skit did, today we're going to talk about bankroll management, one of the most common questions I get. So what is bankroll management? Bankroll management is your plan for how you manage your money in poker, because your money is your inventory, right? It's how you run your business. Why do you need bankroll management? Like what's the point? Why do poker players need this? Well, let me give you a very simplified example. So let's say that these coins represent our bankroll, our money in poker. If you come into the game and you decide, okay, well, I'm gonna take this much and play a tournament, right? We have a problem because based on the variance video that we just made a couple days ago, go check that out, there is short-term luck in poker, and a lot of it, right? You could just take a bad beat. Let's say you had to get it all in with ace king and someone had jacks and you lost. Well, now this money is gone. And look what's happened to your bankroll. Now, that can be fine if you're playing poker for fun, but if you're a professional poker player, you can't have this sort of situation. You can't take this sort of risk. Let's take a different approach, right? Let's say we're a professional tournament player and we decide, I'm gonna play a tournament. Take a bad beat, it's gone. I'm gonna play a tournament. Take a bad beat, it's gone. I'm gonna play a tournament. Oh wow, and now we win 4. Now our bankroll's growing. We don't wanna put all of our risk on one tournament. We wanna factor in that crazy bad things are gonna happen to us and slowly but surely add to our bankroll over time. So we're gonna make sure to not be the meme that the general public thinks we are. We're not putting our whole bankroll on the line. So how should we go about defining a bankroll management strategy? This is something that you would think is very simple because it's just managing money, right? But in reality, it's quite nuanced and it's very individualistic depending on what your situation is in life. So we're gonna talk about 2 things today. One is the actual system that you use. Those 2 systems are a max buy-in or an average buy-in system. And the second thing we're gonna talk about is the different factors that will go into deciding what your bankroll management strategy should be. The max buy-in strategy is, let's say that you start out with a certain amount of money and you decide, I have $100 and I want to play a max buy-in of 100. So that would mean with $100, you can play a maximum tournament of $1. You can't ever go over that. You can't play $1.50. You can only play $1. That's a max buy-in system. And if you're newer to the game or you're inexperienced, this is going to be the best system for you because it's very clear cut and there's no ways to sort of manipulate or abuse the system to play things that you wouldn't normally want to play. The second system is an average buy-in system. This makes a lot of sense for higher stakes players or professional players or people that are playing a bunch of different buy-ins at the same time because there might not be $50, $40 tournaments that run in a day. So in an average buy-in system, let's say you have a bankroll of $1,000 and you want to play an average buy-in of $10, which would be an average of 100 buy-ins, right? With that average, well, there's not that many $10 tournaments, so you might play the Big 22, which is a $22 tournament, but then you throw in 3 or 4 $5 tournaments as well, and some 11s, so that at the end of the day, your average buy-in settles out to $10, so you're sticking to that, but you're playing a range so that you can get enough volume and enough tournaments in. So the positives of an average buy-in is more flexibility, but the negatives are you can abuse it, right? You can play huge tournaments that are way outside of your bankroll and very risky, and then just justify balancing it by playing these really tiny tournaments on the side. And that's not going to be the best system to promote your growth in the game overall, but it is an option. You have that flexibility. So now that we have the 2 systems in place that you can use, we need to talk about the factors you need to think about when it comes to designing your own bankroll management. There's all sorts of things thrown around online, right? Like you need 100 buy-ins, you need 30 buy-ins, you need 500 buy-ins, right? There's all sorts of systems that people use. And typically when it's talked about, it's like very cut and dry. Well, I'm here to tell you today, there is no cut and dry answer for all of you. We need to consider the different factors for each of us. So those factors are, what are your goals, right? If your goal in poker is to have fun, and this is like going to a movie for you and you just want to have an enjoyable time, you don't need a poker bankroll. You need a poker budget. That's something my friend Bill Perkins taught me. Don't just think from a professional poker player mindset, right? Some people play just because they like playing and they don't really care if they're long-term profitable or not. They want to have a fun gamble. So that's the first thing. Don't feel bad if you're just playing for fun. You just need to have a poker budget that fits your life. But if you're like most of us that are probably watching this channel, and most people that aspire to play poker, your goal is to become profitable and make money at the game. Those two situations have very different results in terms of how you should structure your bankroll. The second factor you need to think about is your edge. I have a really good explanation for this, and I can show you using my computer a little bit, the sorts of differences in results you can have based on how good you are in the games you play and how big the games are you play. So let's check that out. So your edge is a massive factor when it comes to what games you can play. And I wanted to show you guys a little bit of how that can change based on your edge in the game. Now, the first thing to think about is your edge is hard to know. And that's one of the hard parts about poker, right? Is everyone's making educated guesses at how big their edge is. But let's say we could know, right? So let's say we play tournaments on PokerStars, and the average size tournament we play is 100 players, right? And in this 100-player tournament, it pays 15 places, 15%, okay? The buy-in is going to be $1, and we pay 10 cents in rake. And let's choose a return on investment. So let's go for a pretty middle of the road here, 25%, okay? So let's say we're going to play $1 tournaments, 100-person field, paying 15% of the field with a return on investment of 25%. And we're going to play this 1,000 times, right? So let's check it out. And all of a sudden here we see this graph. Now what this graph is saying is this is what your result would be after 1,000 tournaments based on a standard deviation of where your results would finish, right? So 50%, the average result would be $267.40 based on this simulation, okay? 3% of the time, you only make $65. You know, you're expected to make $2.50 per game over 1,000 games. You're expected to make $250. 4% of the time, you're only making 1/3 of that. And let's look at the other side here. It's like, okay, 5% of the time, you're making $485 or more. So that's with a 25% return on investment. Now, let's say you had access to a game that you were incredibly crushing. You know, you were much better than the opponents, okay? So let's throw it up to 100% ROI. Watch this. The worst result is $721. And as you can see on this graph, there's not much difference. And the reason for that is that the higher your edge is, the less variance you're going to be able to expect. An extreme situation. Let's say that the $1 buy-ins are really difficult for you. Like for me, when I play the $1,000 tournaments, they're very difficult for me. And it's tough to tell whether I'm winning, if I'm winning how much, or if I'm losing. It's tough to tell. I mean, you need a big sample. Again, we're looking at 1,000 tournaments here. So let's say that we have a 5% return on investment in this $1 tournament. Now what can we expect? With a 5% return on investment, 32% of the time, 31.5% of the time, we're losing money. We're profitable in this tournament, but if we play 1,000 tournaments, which for some of you represents 8 months of playing tournaments, 1/3 of the time we're going to be down money after 8 months. Just let that sink in for a second, right? This should be a big factor in determining your bankroll management. Because if you're playing games where you don't have a huge edge, and you're playing against tough competition, you need to understand that like poker variance is long and it's intense. So you need to be able to expect that you can have some of these negative results. So as you can see there, massive differences depending on what you're choosing to play. What is your edge in the games? The third thing, and I think the most important thing, is your life situation. Let's take 2 examples here, right? We have Jerry. Jerry is 45 years old, and Jerry is a professional poker player. Jerry has a mortgage. His wife is a stay-at-home mom, and he has 2 kids, right? So he's got bills to pay every year, and he has people that depend on him. Do you think Jerry should be taking an aggressive bankroll management strategy? No, of course not, because he has people that depend on him. He has to be responsible in his life, and he has to have certainty that he's going to be able to provide for the people around him. Let's take this guy over here named Jake, okay? Jake, 19 years old, fresh out of high school. He's going to college, of course, in a country where you can play at 19, like Canada. He's in university. He's got a little side job or whatever, and he likes poker. Maybe one day he wants to be a professional, but really he's just gaining some experience and having fun. Can Jake be more aggressive than Jerry? Of course Jake can, right? Because he doesn't have the people depending on him. He has a job that he can rely on, so Jake can be more aggressive. What is your life situation? That is a massive factor in determining what's going to be right for you. The fourth is your mental game. Are you good at the mental game of poker? Let's say that you take an aggressive strategy and you play in tough games against really difficult opponents and you lose 20 buy-ins. You swing 20% of your bankroll. Are you going to be able to be motivated to continue playing, be still playing your best, and be able to move down in stakes and not have that affect your motivation to continue to succeed? You kind of need that if you're going to take an aggressive approach. If you struggle at those sort of things and you find yourself to be a tilty player and maybe you want a bit more consistency and a smoother ride up the ladder, well then you should take a more conservative approach, right? Where you're not going to have that negative feedback in those difficult situations. And the last factor you need to think about is your willingness to adapt. We touched on this a little bit in mental game, but with a bankroll management system, you're going to be constantly moving up and down. And I'm not talking like every 6 months. I'm talking every day you have a new average buy-in. Every day you have a new max buy-in, and you're going to be adjusting. One week you could be playing the $11 tournaments, and the next week you could be playing a max of $4. So are you able to do that? If you can do that quickly and you can have it not affect you, well then you want to take an aggressive approach. If it's something where you're going to struggle and you might lose motivation or you might go against your rules, well then you got to dial it back and go conservative. So that's a basic summary on the things you need to think about. Now, I know I haven't really directly answered your question, like what should my bankroll management be? And as you figured out, you kind of need to sort that for yourself, right? So I'm happy to weigh in on your guys' situations down in the comments. If you want to describe all of these things for yourself, I would love to give you my opinion on what I would do in your situation. I'll give you some hard and fast rules here. Again, please don't use these, but I know some of you want them, so I'm going to throw it out there. I would say the most cited number for bankroll management for tournaments would be 100 buy-ins. Again, that's too loose for some people, and that's too tight for some people. But 100 buy-ins is pretty standard. A lot of the professionals will spout 200, 300 buy-in numbers for their games. And then if you're just getting into the game, it might be kind of boring if you can only play $1 tournaments and you're making a $100 deposit. So like you might want to play a $5 tournament to check it out, you know? That's all I have to say about bankroll management. I hope this video was at least informative as to what you should be thinking about when coming up with the answer. And once again, if you guys want to talk about any of this down in the comments, I would love to take a look at your situation and answer and give you some feedback, because it's very simple once you have a plan, but making the plan is a little bit nuanced and it's very individual. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. Drop a subscribe. Until tomorrow, we'll see you later.